All right, thank you. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Goodeman. I'm a mechanical engineer, lead fellow, and building science practice lead at Branch Pattern. I'm here in Omaha, Nebraska. Branch Pattern is a building consultancy for commercial real estate, powered by building science with foundations as an engineering design firm. And I am also currently the chair of the LEED EQ tag, which is the technical advisory group for the development of the LEED rating system. So I'm going to talk today about what's new in LEED V5. And honestly, this is the presentation I gave first in November last year, but the topic of what's new can change honestly week to week since we're in active, rapid development of the rating system right now. So this is kind of as it stands currently, but honestly, and I'll get into timeline as we go through this presentation, next month it will change because there's a lot of new things happening that I personally am really excited to be a part of and contribute to. So when we think about LEED, way back to when it stood for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, it's a green building rating system, right? And V5 is a huge important milestone for the rating system to align it better with Paris Climate Accord, 2030 and 2050 targets, and look at issues like equity, health, ecosystems, and resilience. So LEED V5 is built around a restructured LEED rating system framework, at the top of which are these system goals here. We have climate action, quality of life, and ecological conservation and restoration. These are overarching areas of focus that will guide the next several versions of the rating system into the future. And what I'm also really excited about is that LEED is continuously evolving to a 5-year rating system development cycle, much like a code cycle. So that will be great going forward. Looking at these future of LEED goals and diving a little bit deeper, these principles came out of work that was done way back in 2022. And these future of LEED principles were developed to guide the development of this next version of the rating system. So looking at what can LEED do to both address where the market is currently and push the market into the future. So we want to decarbonize fast to reflect the urgency of the climate crisis. We want to inspire and recognize adaptive and resilient built environments and invest in human health and well-being. That's obviously something that I get into a lot in the EQ category. Create environments in which diversity, equity, and inclusivity thrive and support flourishing ecosystems through regenerative development practices. And so these are really the fundamental backbone and the structure of what's going on behind the nuance of when we get to individual points and individual credits and what credits in terms of prerequisites and credits both align with these things. So this was really the drumbeat and the framework and the structure behind all the work that we've done over the past few years. Investing in human health and well-being is one of those critical principles. So we want to look at the people in the buildings, and it's one consideration among many. And it's always been part of the rating system, but now with an even stronger emphasis, I think personally. So when we get into LEED development, there's all kinds of amazing volunteers in addition to the USGBC staff that I am privileged to work with as part of this process. And the graphic on the right was something that I drew for myself when I joined the tag originally. I think it was in 2019, because it can be a little confusing. Like, how does this rating system happen? And it's through the work of 100 plus people that give their time to the USGBC and work with the staff to refine the rating system language, the intent of the credits, and have really interesting discussions. So it's a group that I've been happy to be part of, and I would recommend it as a volunteer activity for anyone. So if you look on this slide, the LEED steering committee is kind of at the top. And the way this works is it builds from the bottom up. So we have the technical advisory groups, the tags down at the bottom, location and planning, water, materials, energy, EQ, and sites. And then the chair of each of those tags occupies a voting seat on what used to be the technical committee, but the technical committee actually went away. So I should probably redo this graphic next time I do this presentation. So now, in addition to being the chair of the EQ tag, I also have a seat on the LEED steering committee, as do the chairs of the other tags. And then there are additionally members of the steering committee. So if you look at the left side, this is actually how the committees are structured now. So we have the technical advisory groups, we have the LEED steering committee, and then we have these consensus committees and working groups, which were relatively new additions. And the intent behind those was to expedite the development of this rating system. So all the volunteers on those committees actually are probably what I would call super experienced volunteers from other committees. And they all had to vote and become part of this process. So there's kind of a hierarchy to it, but it's all very open and transparent in terms of development, and information flows, from down up and then up down and kind of back and forth in this cycle. So here are the timelines that as they kind of currently stand. I did just update this slide this morning. So in 2023, if you remember, at Greenbuild, the existing buildings operations and maintenance V5 was launched, and there is a beta program going on right now for existing buildings to certify in V5, which is really cool. Our office here in Omaha is actually participating in that, and that's going to go all the way through 2024, so this year, and close that beta program in Q4. So I think at Greenbuild this year, there will be some report out that goes along with that. And so far this year, the Design and Consensus Committee and the LEED Steering Committee actually just this week, so this is like hot off the presses news, we had a vote to, one vote of many to move us forward more towards this public comment. So the design and construction first public comment will be in April of this year, probably. Keep an eye out for that. Any of these dates and are subject to change in the future going forward. But what I think is great about the rating system development is that we have spent many hours developing the language as it currently stands, but then this will get issued for public comment. So then the public and USGBC members will have the opportunity to weigh in and offer critiques and tweak the language, and then we'll be able to revise before it becomes a final balloted rating system, because also the membership will have to vote and approve whatever future language we issue because of these changes in public comments. So we will have 2 public comment periods over the course of this year, and then hopefully go to ballot late 2024. So this presentation, I'm going to talk about the design and construction, the new buildings rating system language, and the existing buildings O&M rating system language. So we're going to start with O&M. But back to the system goals, thinking about that circle chart, climate action, quality of life, and ecological conservation and restoration, then we need to think about, well, how are these going to be ultimately weighted? Because we do have a limit to the number of points in the rating system. At the end of the day, we're not going to change the scale on any project, so silver, gold, platinum. But we did have a lot of interesting conversations about what does it mean to be a LEED platinum project, and what are the minimum mandatory requirements that projects will have to meet. So this is, in general, how these goals are currently landing in terms of the weighting. This was presented at Greenbuild last year. And then we start to get a little bit more nuance, like, well, if we have those 3 goals on the left-hand side, how does that overlay with the other primary future of LEED principles that we talked about? And this framework developed the rating system language as we currently see it. So drilling into one of those concepts a little bit more, health and well-being, when we look at human health and well-being in buildings, we're thinking about physical health, mental health, and behavioral well-being for all occupants, whether they're full-time or part-time occupants in buildings, or transient like visitors, and in current and future climate. So there's these interesting overlaps and discussions that happen when we frame the whole rating system in terms of resiliency and future adaptation. So the main 3 topics of how we get there: sustaining quality air during regular operation and under adverse conditions, whether it's pandemics or wildfires or the other things that we've talked about recently. And then understanding and accommodating project-specific occupant needs and integrating health and well-being co-benefits alongside environmental conditions. So here is where we get into some rating system language specifically. So physical, mental, and behavioral well-being are really the main three things we're going to talk about. And this is how we get there. So air quality is obviously a huge part of indoor environmental quality. It's also conveniently the topic that seems to be the most developed, I would say, and widely adopted currently in commercial real estate industry. And then we're going to look at innovation through connecting with natural systems, biophilic design, things like that, and supporting physical and mental diversity for occupants within spaces. So this is a summary of the beta draft that has been released. You can download the full O&M rating system beta version language from USGBC's website. There were 21 total points that came out as part of this. And it's interesting, you'll see when we get into the new construction version, there's even already some changes that have happened in the language for the new construction rating system versus the existing building rating system, just based on how the market has changed. Because there was about a couple years, maybe between the development work on those versions, though we are trying to bring them into alignment so that when buildings get certified, new construction buildings get certified under version 5 for design and construction, it will be easy to roll into ongoing certifications with O&M. And the items in bold here are the ones I'm going to drill down into a little bit more specifically. But there are 4 prerequisites. There's environmental tobacco smoke control. I'll start from the bottom and go up. Verification of ventilation and filtration, green cleaning policy, which is very exciting, and occupant needs assessment for existing buildings. The wording and the titles of some of these, and I'm kind of laughing because I think about the conversations that we had. A lot, I didn't realize till I was on the tag that how much work goes into the development of very specific words and language that we use in this rating system. So it is intentional, and it's intended to be clear, but then sometimes our processes and our heads are so deeply embedded in it that we lose track of what we meant originally, and it can become confusing. So I guess always go to the intent, and here we'll drill down a little bit more specifically on the verification of ventilation and filtration. But other points, the credits within this section include indoor air quality performance. There's a lot of points there. We recognize that, but like I said, it's kind of the most developed of the indoor environmental quality criteria. And this can change in the future. That's the other thing I feel like I have to remind people is that it's not forever. Like we're making the best decisions with the rating system and the information that we have now, both from a standpoint of wanting to push the market forward, but then reflecting where the market is now. If we can't push too much and expect people to use this rating system, and we have to be able to be adaptable and like bring people along so that we can please, I guess, people that are leading the market, and then appease people that maybe are hesitant to use a framework like LEED. Then we have occupant satisfaction survey, green cleaning, and integrated pest management. So prerequisite, ventilation and filtration verification. The intent here, and like I said, it's always good to go back to the intent, is to understand the amount of outdoor air being delivered by the ventilation systems, how it relates with the exhaust and filtration, and compare to ventilation standards for indoor air quality. And again, remember, this is an existing building. So if you've done any work in existing buildings, you know that there could be, or there is often a lot of room for improvement when it comes to ventilation in buildings. So we have to have information on the current facility requirements and operations and maintenance for the building, and how is the ventilation system currently operating, and what preventative maintenance is in place. And then there is also a relevant and reference prerequisite in the EA category for energy and carbon policy management that would have to be considered as part of this as well. Then outdoor air, we want to know not just how much air are you bringing in the building, but, though of course that's important too, but what is the local and regional air quality specifically at the site? And this is something that I think we're going to be talking a lot more about over the next few years, almost like hyper local outdoor air quality monitoring, because if your building is located right next to a busy street with a lot of internal combustion vehicles driving up and down all day long, those vehicles have byproducts. And where's the air intake, and how does that affect the kind of outdoor air that you're bringing into the building versus a building that maybe is located in a rural site with the intake on the roof? And then system assessment is the other prerequisite piece here. So looking at or completing a mechanical ventilation calculation, measuring of outside air, comparing those two. So how much air should we be bringing in? How much air are we bringing in? Looking at the types of filtration in place. Are the economizers working? If there's natural ventilation, how big are the openings? Are they functional? And the exhaust system performance to relate to overall building pressurization. Okay, so here's the big credit that I mentioned for air quality monitoring. This IAQ performance, EQ credit. So there's a couple different options, and this actually spans 2 slides because there's so much content here. There's ultimately 3 options and several paths to achieve points in this credit. So remember, there's 13 possible total points here. And each of these options you can get for option 1 from 1 to 10 points, option 2, 1 to 6, option 3, 1 to 4. You'll notice those do not add up to 13. So there's different ways that you could kind of optimize the options that you're pursuing and the paths that you're pursuing within this credit. So again, it was, believe it or not, even larger than it is now. If you're interested in air quality monitoring, I would love your feedback on this specific credit or any of this rating system language. But like I said, we're trying to get it right, kind of right size it for everybody and leave a lot of options. So when we look at continuous air quality monitoring, path 1A under option 1, you have to measure at least one parameter. And again, if you're familiar with continuous monitoring, you look at this table at the left, these are kind of the options that you have for monitoring one single parameter. But you know that many monitors will do multiples of these. So we have carbon dioxide, particulate matter 2.5, total volatile organic compounds, ozone, PM10, nitrogen dioxide, and formaldehyde. You pick these, and this was another interesting conversation we had on the tag, because what is the most actionable? I think this is another project that I'm working on. There's a forthcoming white paper from Building Green that's like, it's going to have a better title than this, but the working title was something along the lines of, so you have some air quality monitors. Now what? Like, what do we do with the data? Who's looking at it? And what are the actionable steps we can take to improve the air quality in our existing buildings? So continuous monitoring, you have to monitor at least one parameter for 4 consecutive months at most a 1 hour interval. But if it's CO2, then we want monitoring points every 15 minutes. The monitors have to be building grade or better, and we define that currently as either reset grade B or UL 2905. Then for path 1B, you have to actually monitor the air and demonstrate that the air quality is good. So path 1A is just monitor. Like, you don't actually have to meet any kind of performance criteria. Path 1B is you're monitoring and you're demonstrating good or minimally good quality performance on those contaminants. And then path 2A includes air quality testing. So again, this is an existing building, but point in time air quality testing specifically for component VOCs, I think is really valuable. So that's an add-on there. So one-time air testing would be to hire somebody to come in and do the testing. And then path 2B parallels that path 1B, where 1A is doing monitoring, 1B is demonstrating good air quality. Then path 2A is doing testing, and 2B is you get points for having good air quality. So there's a parallel there, which I like how that turned out. And then options 2 and 3. 2 is ventilation and filtration standards. There's 1 to 6 points here. That's demonstrating that ventilation is per ASHRAE 62.1. And you can get 2 to 4 points by either meeting the requirement of the standard or exceeding it by these 2 percentage thresholds. So I think the points are something like 2, 3, 4 are this option for option 2, path 1. And then path 2 is if you have MERV 13 filtration. The biggest difference here is that we have a point available for filtering of outside air and a point for filtration of recirculated air. So if you remember during the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about MERV 13 filters. You couldn't buy them a lot of places, but what people did not have, a lot of buildings actually had filtration of outside air at MERV 13 levels. A lot of buildings wanted and did not have or couldn't accommodate filtration of recirculated air. So there was a lot of work for us mechanical engineers out there to talk about static pressure of fans and filter drafts and things like that. And then option 3 is essentially bonus points or options to improve indoor air quality in existing buildings. And you get to pick one of these strategies from the table on the left-hand side of the slide. This is another item specifically that I think we wanted to make sure that we captured any and all potential things. So you'll notice other components from different areas of different rating systems that we wanted to reward somehow for buildings that are doing these things. So that's another area I think would be good for specific review and feedback from the public. Okay, whoops, sorry there. I am going to move on now to new construction, BD&C version of the rating system. So again, this is the underlying drumbeat and structure of what we're doing specifically in the IEQ or the EQ category. I use those terms interchangeably. Technically, we're called the EQ tag, but the category is related to indoor environmental quality. So we want to develop safe and healthy spaces just to reinforce that promote physical, mental, and behavioral well-being for all occupants in current and future climates. So these were the specific V5 priorities for indoor environmental quality. For climate and health, we're looking at infection risk, wildfire, smoke, and episodic outdoor conditions, thermal resilience, inclusive access to daylight views, and biophilia. So again, on new construction, we can influence some of these things a little more heavily, and so that's what we're trying to do. Specifically also when it comes to physical and mental diversity and how buildings can support occupants, and getting back to the 3 systemic goals of the rating system: quality of life, climate action, and ecological conservation and restoration. So thermal design, inclusive design, acoustics, and accessibility. This is that same table format that I presented previously for O&M, but this is for BD&C. So this is our new construction summary. This big caveat here, this was a draft. This is not public yet. We have made changes. So this is my disclaimer slide. But as of somewhat recently, this was how the new construction rating system was panning out for indoor environmental quality. So we had a few different prerequisites and credits here. This will be, I think, probably what we get the most feedback on. New construction, I think, just has been the most widely adopted rating system since forever. Now, I mean, as consultants, we're seeing a lot more O&M, but I think because of the performance pathways, which are great, there's going to be a huge focus on new construction and a lot of really good feedback that I think we're hoping to get as part of this first public comment. So here we are. Okay, again, we're going to talk in detail about the ones in bold. So air quality, occupant needs assessment, and air quality monitoring. So again, some of the same themes that I talked about in the O&M rating system do carry over here. Okay, prerequisite air quality for building design and construction. Again, this was kind of a personal passion project for me. Emphasize outdoor air quality investigation. If like I have, you are a nerd and have read the beginning sections of ASHRAE Standard 62, you know that this has been in there forever. But I remember the first time I read it as a younger engineer, I was surprised that it wasn't something we seem to be actively putting into practice when we were designing buildings. It's like you maybe you're supposed to go to the site and look for and around anything that could be impacting air quality that you'd be bringing into that building. And I think honestly, the speed of schedules and a lot of historic knowledge on projects and how we do things as the industry doesn't allow for that time to ask additional questions. But we have written this prerequisite in a way that we're asking project teams to prove some level of outdoor air quality investigation instead of just checking the checkbox in the form that this happened. So I assume we'll get some feedback on that, but we'll see. And then there was another big change allowing the ventilation rate procedure, the indoor air quality procedure, or the natural ventilation procedure to show compliance for ventilation. IAQ procedure, I think in newer versions of Standard 62 has gone through a lot of work by a whole nother group of really committed and dedicated and smart volunteers. So I think that will be really good to incorporate as a optional compliance path with the rating system. And then filtration for outdoor and recirculated air is something else, like I talked about previously, that is a potential change here in the future of the rating system. When we were putting this together, we were still deciding things like these were the discussions that continue to happen on the tag level in EQ. Do we want to continue to require outdoor monitors at a prerequisite level or move that to a credit level? So some other conversations that I think are interesting are when we think about, well, how much can we push or ask people to do before we alienate people from the rating system, right? Like we want LEED to be functional and adaptable to all kinds of different project types and locations, right? Like if we're asking people to do things that aren't typical for the market or going to be really burdensome in terms of cost or implementation, I think we want to know that. That's why it's important to have a lot of broad representation from different people on the tag when we have these conversations and what we're requiring versus asking the prerequisite versus the credit level people to do on projects. And then for another prerequisite here, we have this occupant needs assessment. Honestly, 90 something percent sure this has a totally different name now, or it might not even be a prerequisite. But getting back to the intent, this was something that we wanted to just have an action plan for how are you thinking to address and design and make the spaces reactive for people. So there are some parallels here that people that are familiar with the well rating system will see, like an acoustical plan, thermal plan, then thinking about things like accessibility criteria above and beyond ADA and minimum code requirements. And this health action plan is also required to use information from the resilience and equity prerequisites. So the resilience and equity working groups, you don't have separate dedicated sections of the rating system because, again, the goal was to put those things in all of the sections throughout the rating system. So this health action plan feeds into that in terms of prereqs, and looking at the most pressing health concerns for people in the building. Things we were still actively discussing on the tag include, does this help us to drive the market and projects, buildings, individual specific buildings, because that's what's often getting designed to meet this rating system, from reactive to proactive decision making. And that's really the whole point and intent behind this prerequisite. So not to just fix problems when there's acoustical adjacencies that aren't working, but to look at how do we build better interactions, how much existing data and work can we essentially ask the design team to do if they want to adopt LEED, we're asking them to change their process a little bit here, and that can be uncomfortable and challenging for people. And then how do we organize that around the traditional indoor environmental quality factors, thermal comfort, acoustics, daylight, air quality, and whatnot. When it comes to the air quality monitoring in new construction, It's similar to the O&M version. So we're looking for building grade or better monitors. We have an option for baseline testing still, like that point in time testing is still in there. But we're really also trying to advocate for continuous monitoring because on new buildings, that's the best time we can put these monitors in place. So again, there's kind of two tiers where you're putting continuous monitors in. We want there to be kind of at a minimum those five normal things you see with continuous monitors: CO2, PM 2.5, TVOC, temperature, and relative humidity. And then the second tier, I think, is going to end up as a pick pick one or two of these other things that are not kind of typical of commercial grade air quality monitors. And then there's an option for continuous outdoor monitoring as well, which I am excited about. I have a couple outdoor monitors here at our building, one on my desk, not installed yet, but like I said before, I think the kind of hyper local, almost a comparative economizing control for indoor versus outdoor air quality is something that's going to be coming in the future and to stay on top of. So we wanted to make sure it was reflected in the rating system. And then things that were still under discussion. Do we need more points for teams wanting to do indoor, outdoor, and testing? Like, are there enough points? And this is the part we have to get into trade-offs with the other committees on, like, there's a set number of points. How do we allocate the points based on the system goals, future of LEED principles, and what makes the most sense in terms of what is easy and what is hard, honestly, to get in terms of points in the rating system. And then we get into the nuance of, should this credit be called air quality monitoring and testing? At one point, it was called just air quality monitoring. I think now it's air quality monitoring and testing because we had a testing option in here. And then what are the right number of parameters? And this gets back to the actionable. What are the actionable parameters? So how many should we require teams to include per point and things like that? So lots of interesting content, lots of interesting conversation. I have a QR code here on my last slide, which I think goes to, I should have definitely checked this, but I think it goes to resources on indoor quality. Oh, there's definitely links to download the draft rating system language for O&M. There's links to future of LEED document. That's a good one to read. There's links to V5 new construction and probably some other air quality goodness in there. So that concludes the content I had for today.
All right, I'm just scanning the QR code just to double check.
Yeah, let's make sure it's functional.
Oh yes, yes, bunch of links. Your email and websites and things. Yes,
Yeah, that sounds right.
perfect, perfect. So, great presentation, Sarah. And this is the reason why you were uh, one of the first people that I asked to be a part of this event, based on a webinar that I saw you do last fall. So thank you for participating. I do have a few quick questions. Hopefully we can do kind of quick fire questions,
Sure.
quick answers, and
Yeah, that's
let you get
great.
back to work. So I I love the the invest in health, human health and wellness. I love the direction that LEED is going in that regard. I take my portable indoor air quality monitors to a lot of buildings while I travel, and I'm inside a lot of LEED buildings, whether they be gold, silver, or platinum, and the air quality is not that great. And so the good news is that LEED version 5 is has the potential to really convert me to being a fan, with the real-time indoor air quality monitoring, because I'm glad that it's going in that direction. Creating environments for equity. The theme for this year's conference, this year's Baltimore Climate Tech 2024, is climate justice, um,
Hmm.
especially in and around Baltimore. So creating environments for equity, is environmental justice and a part of that conversation?
Yeah, I think so. for sure. And that was and is addressed through one of our working groups. And so I've been really encouraged through the conversations that I've heard take place that are intended to weave throughout this rating system. And I also, as I think a lot of people do, recognize that it's probably not going to feel like enough. It's hard to get to a point where we're like, are we doing enough? Like
Mm,
that's something I personally struggle with. Like it's for I think people that view the world as having a lot of opportunity for change. You can get frustrated when things don't change fast enough to reflect or correct maybe previous inequities and for problems that you see clearly, even if there aren't clear solutions, it's hard to maybe see not as much or not as quick or urgent of action as you would prefer. But I think all that said, there's a lot being done with a lot of intentionality and care behind it in this new version of the rating system that I do feel really optimistic and excited about. And then acknowledge that it's not the end, right? It is a version,
mhm,
and we're going to get on a more continuous update cycle going forward. So
mm.
I think as part of this rollout for the V5 language in April, there's going to be a series of videos that we talked about doing at the steering committee level to really like push this out to our networks. And I want to make sure that we can be intentional and like leverage all of our connections in the industry to get feedback from the people that maybe we haven't historically heard from
Mm.
in terms of rating system development. So how can we better serve everyone and not just maybe the people that have been historically involved in this process?
Sure, sure. I like that. Redlining was invented here in Baltimore, so in the early
Omaha is
1900s.
very familiar with it as well, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes. Another thing that I love about Lead version 5 is the reset component, kind of that reset. Well, Lead, there's always been a Lead reset crosswalk, but it sounds like it's being more ingrained. Um, what's your say on that?
Yeah, that was one of those conversations over the past 5 years that we've had on and off, which is like, should we intentionally write that in to the rating system as a compliance path under option whatever for this credit? Because yeah, that crosswalk has existed, but it's been a little buried, admittedly, historically, and we struggled with that internally as consultants. For projects that pursue multiple certifications, I do think that we can and we should be more intentional about minimizing du- duplicate work and looking at crosswalks and overlaps. So yes, I'm feeling good about the possibility for projects that pursue certifications like Reset
Mhm.
to be well aligned with this new version of the rating system.
Yes, very, very exciting. Very exciting to hear that.
Hmm.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I did hear that in Las Vegas, smoking is allowed in some LEED certified buildings. Is that accurate, non-accurate? And does LEED V5 potentially make that not an option anymore?
That's a great question. I don't, unfortunately have the mental capacity to, know about every single LEED certified project in the rating system it was certified under. But I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. And then you look at projects in different jurisdictions with even more stringent anti-tobacco use or anti-smoking policies, and we have to have variances to reflect those, even if a project wants to pursue LEED, but there's a more stringent smoking policy. I think compartmentalization, and honestly, I haven't had the pleasure of even designing buildings that allow smoking in them. So
There
I
you go.
think we we've had some interesting conversations on that topic, not so much in the example that you provided, but it's like the impact of that on other people in the building that might not choose to participate, right? So
Mhm,
it's like
mhm,
if they're smoking in the building in this area, how do you make sure that that doesn't unfairly impact other people? And we talked about things like there was a collaborative discussion with the Canada Green Building Council where we talked about like native tribal ceremonies and things that allow for smoking or combustion of products or
Mhm.
burning of herbs and incenses. And it's like that is needed and required. But
Mhm.
then how much, this is the interesting nuance of the rating system. How much do we or can we or should we require or put into the rating system versus how much of that is on the design team and the engineer of record and the designer of record to influence. So I think we look at the intent, and it's like, again, like I said, getting back to the intent. The intent of this prerequisite
Mhm.
is to improve the health and wellness of all the people in the building.
Mhm.
So I think it's possible going forward. I'm not going to say that there won't be a building that will have a LEED certified building that has smoking in it, because there's also all kinds of these interesting examples where you have to consider adaptability of the rating system. But
Mhm.
that's a great question. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love
So
to nerd out on that stuff.
yeah. So, I was originally introduced to you from following the reviews, the indoor air quality, outdoor air quality reviews that you do on your YouTube channel. That's how I've been following you maybe for a year or so, prior to me understanding that you were so immersed in this process of LEED version 5. But I have a question about outdoor air quality monitors, and
Mm,
I've heard that the most affordable outdoor air quality monitor is an indoor air quality monitor with an outdoor casing. What's your
mm.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is probably true. Honestly, there are some now better outdoor air quality monitors, but even those, if you look at the temperature ratings for those, I'm in climate zone 5A here, right? So we have super hot, humid summers, terribly very cold winters. And so, the range of functionality on these devices is really important. So, yes, I'm interested in testing outdoor air quality monitors just to know what's on the market and what's available, and then comparing it to the indoor monitors that I have. But yeah, I'd say right now, historically, the best, lowest cost, adaptable option is probably the indoor air quality monitor, that is monitoring the outdoor air as it comes into the building, right? Like in the duct, not in the duct, but like through a tube that's connected to the outdoor air quality
Right,
duct,
the
the outdoor air duct. Yeah,
fresh air plenum. Am I pronouncing that
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Plenum. Yeah, it
Mhm.
depends. I mean, that's my other favorite answer. It depends, and I do have to get going to my next meeting here, but
Sure, sure.
it depends on how the system's designed, right? So it's like you have to have somebody at the table that has knowledge of the air quality technology, the mechanical system, and then if it's new or existing building, that's part of the conversation too.
I will ask my other questions when we see you in person at Baltimore Climate Tech 2025 here in Baltimore next year.
And probably in the meantime, we'll talk too, I hope.
Yes. Sarah, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for your time, your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership. You have been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it. So
My,
stay
my
in touch.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.